Veda, and you can repeat. It's very simple. You can take a deep breath. Om Swasti no Govindaha Swasti no Achyutananto Vishnu Dadhatu Swasti no Narayano Narovai Swasti naha Padmanabhaha Purushottamo Dadhatu Swasti no Visvakseno Visvesvaraha Swasti no Rishikesho Hari Dadhatu Swasti no Vainatayo Hari Swasti naha Anjana Suto Hanur Bhagavato Dadhatu Swasti Swasti Sumangalai Kesho Mahan Sri Krishna Sachidananda Ghanaha Sarveshwareshwaro Dadhatu Swasti 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 Su Asti Iti Swasti. We see on your emblem there is a swastika. Swasti. Su means beautiful. Asti is the verb to be. Su Asti Swasti. Beautiful existence. Indeed, existence is beautiful. But when we see the existence filtered through the lower consciousness, then it seems to be chaotic and difficult. When the consciousness is pure, then we realize Swasti, existence is extremely beautiful. Namashishtam manamapi asachibhutam atasurupam rupam tasyagrajavuripuri maturim gostuatim Radha Kundam Girivara Aho Radhika Madhuvasam Prapto Yasya Patita Kripaya Sri Guru Tam Natosmi Govind Jai Jai Gopal Jai Jai Radha Ramana Hari Govind Jai Jai Govind Jai Jai Govind Jai Jai, Gopal Jai Jai, Radha Hari, Govind Jai Jai. वृंदावन लाल की जय, वरसन वाली की जय, शुभानुम राजकुमार जू की जय, जय जय श्री राधे। You may be thinking, what does that have to do with the seminar? So just have a little trust that that will become very clear to you within the next 40 minutes. So first of all, before I speak, I bow down and I offer my heart like so many flower petals as an offering of love at the feet of my Guru, my spiritual master, who unfortunately is no longer physically present in this world. Nitya-lila Pravishtam Vishnupad Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I acknowledge my unpayable indebtedness to my teacher's teacher and to his teacher and his teacher and his teacher, going back thousands of years to the time of Bhagavad Gita, the Vedic age. And finally, I also offer my pranam, my namaskar to all of you. When the Vedas speak of a religion, they use the word dharma. Dharma. Dharma means, it comes from the Sanskrit root dri dhatu, dri, which means to hold. If any substance exists, it has its own nature, which makes it what it is. It holds on to that nature and cannot let go. So the nature of any substance, which is its intrinsic identity that it can never be separated from, is called dharma. It's dharma. For example, the dharma of fire is to emit light and heat. If there's no heat, no light, it's not fire. The dharma of sugar is to be sweet. If it's not sweet, it's not sugar. It could be white sugar, it could be brown sugar. It could be cubes or lumps or powder, whatever, but its dharma is sweetness. So similarly, the Vedic texts are concerned with Atma Dharma. What is the true nature of Atma, the soul? So just as there's no such thing as American fire, Indian fire, Russian fire. Fire is fire and has the same dharma everywhere. So similarly, there's no such thing as American, Indian, Russian, Chinese dharma. Only there is Atma Dharma. Every soul has the universal same intrinsic nature. And the Vedas are concerned with discovering that eternal truth of the self. When a spiritual discourse takes place between individuals, we'll see that there are different types of discourse. The first category is not very evolved. This is the category where I am right about everything. And the others, well, I'm not here to listen to them, I'm here to impose my view. So in this way, when persons are very stuck and set in their ways, they're not listening to others, then it's not really a dialogue, it becomes contentious. Then there's a more evolved dialogue where each person there speak their doctrine, their ideas, their philosophy, and they share with each other the doctrine. But each person is thinking, how can I interpret the other person's doctrine through the categories of my doctrine? Like that. So they also adjust something. They're not clearly hearing from others. The second type of conversation. The third type of conversation is very popular today in the academic discourse. That is the postmodern discourse. In postmodernism, every idea is equal. No idea is better than any other idea. Because if you were to say, some people are laughing, you work in education? Okay, so point taken. So this is the prevalent discourse in academia today, that if you privilege one discourse over another, or you dare to insinuate that it has more merit than another idea, then you're somehow oppressing the other ideas. Like this. And the result of this is we become into a kind of philosophical flatland where we can't get any traction to go up and improve our understanding. It's more or less based not on philosophy but more based on political correctness, which is not a philosophy. So these three types of discussion, they're generally not fruitful. So we want to present the fourth type of discussion, which is the Vedic discourse. You see, the Vedic discourse is not really concerned with the doctrines. Many persons come together and put forward so many doctrinal ideas upon which they can disagree or agree, and so on. But the Vedic discourse is concerned with motivation. This is something deeper. And even the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he also agreed with this Vedic idea that actually what we believe, what we feel to be true, we have already decided. It's a product of our state of consciousness. And philosophy is something that comes in afterwards in order to justify what we feel. So the idea is that our philosophizing, this is not a primary activity, but it's something that goes on in the mental and intellectual plane of our conscious mind. But what we want to believe, what we accept as true, we've already decided that's dictated to us by the subconscious mind. And the level of philosophical discussion just comes in later in order to justify what we essentially irrationally feel to be true. So that means we're driven by irrational impulses, and the philosophical aspect of us is just something that we use to justify them. And this is why the topic of sanskars is essential. Sanskars means, in Sanskrit, impressions. For this we'll have to understand just some basics of the metaphysics of the Vedas. That is that the human being is a combination of two things: Atma, the soul, and the body. Now the body metaphysically is considered to be made of earth, water, fire, air and space. Everyone can agree on that. All the elements can be identified here. So that is the gross covering, the gross vehicle of the soul. But mediating between Atma, the soul, and the body is the mind. The mind. So according to the Vedic theory, that inner sense, the mind, is also a type of matter. It's also material. It's not spiritual, but it's a fine type of matter. The overall name for the subtle body or the psychic body is in Sanskrit Chaitas. Chetas. And this Chetas develops into, first of all, Ahankar, the ego, then Buddhi, the intelligence, and last, the conscious mind. So generally people, they're aware of their conscious mind. People are aware of their Buddhi, their faculty of discrimination, and that's the conscious area. But Ahankar, the ego, generally we're not aware of that. Because that's the perspective from which we see everything. It's not a thing that we see, but it's the platform on which we stand to see everything, so we don't see it ourselves. So the Ahankar, the ego, is there, and finer than that is Chitta, Chetas. It is the finest covering of the soul. And there's a very fine material element, a subtle material element, not material, not spiritual. Now sanskars means that when we are moving in this life, we experience so many things through our senses. And the senses relay the activities of the outside world into the chitta, into the psychic body, and there it leaves an impression. That impression is called sanskar. So some of those impressions are available to us in our conscious mind, and that's called memory. You experience something and later you can recall it because an impression has been left in the chitta, and certain things you can recall, perhaps not everything. Depends on the purity of the consciousness. The more pure the mind is, the better the recall. That's why people who live an undisciplined and unregulated life, they have learning difficulties because the consciousness is too disturbed to catch clear impressions of a book or a lecture or whatever it is, and then they have no recall, so they have educational problems. So the purer the chitta is, the less disturbed it is, then the stronger faculty of recall and so on. So when the chetas, the subtle body of the living entity, is filled with many impressions of tasting the external world, then those impressions cram together within the chetas, and they make a dark patch, because the spirit is the highest energy, the mind is next energy, and then the physical world is the lowest energy. So when the mind becomes absorbed in the gross things of the world and the impressions of that gather, it makes a darkness in the chitta. And so the collected darkness of physical experiences within the subtle body is called ahankar, ego. So the ego is a dark mass within the consciousness of many gross physical experiences. So that ego is subconscious. Now, as we wander through our life, we're aware of our conscious mind. But from time to time, what happens? We have ideas. We have ideas. Oh, I just thought of something. What would you like to do today? And then an idea appears in the conscious mind. Where did that idea come from? Now this begins to challenge our concept of our thinking of ourselves as being completely free and independent in our activities and choices. But the Vedas don't say that. The Vedas tell us that there's such a thing as karma. And that we're experiencing in our life the reactions of past activities. But we feel ourselves to be free. So how is it possible that we have a karma to experience reactions of previous activities, as Jesus Christ said, as you sow, so shall you reap. And at the same time we have the conscious experience of just making decisions in real time. It's very difficult to reconcile these two conceptions. But no. The impressions of previous activities are stored in chetas, in the ego, and we're not conscious of them. And then as we're moving through time, as the soul is moving through time, then from the ahankar, from the ego, emanate the echoes of the sanskars, the echoes of a previous activity. And that echo comes from the ahankar, from the ego, in the form of a desire. In Sanskrit that is called vasana, the vasanas. So the vasanas, our desires, are not really what we want. What do you want to do? You think like that, and then emanating from the ego comes an echo of a previous activity in the subconscious. And so a desire appears, and then we act on that desire. And in this way, the Atma is caught in the bondage of a chain reaction of karma. Now, this implies so many things. So many things are implied by this. If a person will practice meditation, by which the consciousness becomes illuminated, then as your consciousness begins to become illuminated, you can look inside and you can see the sanskars, the impressions in the chitta. That means that what is called the subconscious mind is only the subconscious for ordinary persons who are engaged in external material activities. But those who do a daily sadhana, a spiritual practice, whose senses are not addicted to the external objects, gradually the subtle body becomes more and more pure, from less contact with the lower energy. And as the consciousness becomes pure, that what everyone is calling the subconscious, you become conscious of it as well. So the Vedic sages, and of ancient times and indeed of the present too, who have the experience, they can look at their illuminated chitta and see all the impressions. And what did they see there in the chitta? They saw impressions not only of this life, but of previous lives as well. So the concept of reincarnation is not only a theoretical idea, but once the consciousness is illuminated, you can see in your chitta the sanskars, impressions which you've accumulated from past lives. And it's those past life activities which are currently dictating all of what you call your free choice and independent decisions right now. And this is the very important point about understanding sanskars. That how we're behaving, the choices that we're making, and so on, are being dictated from our subconscious. And they are the echoes of past activities. So the topic of karma and reincarnation here, they go hand in hand. Indeed, perhaps many of you know the Vedic statement, Om Purnam Adaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. The ultimate reality, God, from whom all existence has emanated, is perfect and complete. And therefore, everything which emanates from that Supreme Lord is what? Defective? No. Whatever emanates from God, such as this entire creation, is also perfect and complete. But when we look upon the world, we don't see perfection. We see problems, we see injustice. Injustice going on everywhere. But the Vedas say no. Everything is perfect and complete. If our vision would be made broader, one who has a broad vision in Sanskrit is called Mahatma. Atma is self, Maha means great. Maha Atma, a broad-minded person. Once our vision becomes very broad, then we'll see that a person who's undergoing a difficulty or a problem now that seems to be so unjust, actually is not unjust at all. This is the reaction from the previous life's activities and so on. And therefore, though the world may appear to be unjust, and that makes us become disturbed in mind, makes us become angry, and so on, we can feel that. However, the true vision of the world is that the world is a precise symphony orchestrated and conducted by God with perfection at every moment. When we recognize that, automatically all our fears, our anger, even enmity towards others, everything is completely extinguished. All of this is washed away simply by that vision. I know there's been some discussion this weekend on the subject of forgiveness. So forgiveness is very important. In fact, the Vedas say that a Brahmin, or the highest, most qualified person, the priestly class, the Brahmanas, the thing that makes a Brahmin different from everyone else is the power of forgiveness. Where does the power of forgiveness come from? True forgiveness, real forgiveness. The type of forgiveness that Jesus Christ has when He's being whipped and stabbed and crucified and praying to God, please don't give them any punishment on my behalf. That type of forgiveness, where does that come from? It doesn't come from just trying to be nice. Being nice is nice, but we have to go deeper than that. This forgiveness comes from the understanding that there's no one to forgive and nothing to forgive, because whatever difficulty I'm facing, I made it for myself. And those who are bringing a problem or difficulty to me, they're just delivering it. You know, if you write a letter, if Vera is here, if Vera would write a letter, dear Vera, I hate you, you are crazy. And a long list of abominable insults, and then she folds up the letter, puts it in an envelope, and a stamp, and her own address, and she goes out and puts it in the post office, like that. Then a few days later, the letter comes. If she opens it, what is this? This postman is very wicked. How dare you bring such a blasphemous letter? And she becomes angry with the postman. No. Anyone will not accept this as sane behavior. So similarly, when we become upset with anyone, when we become upset with anything, when we become hostile or have any enmity towards someone, or consider someone or something else to be the cause of our problem, we're exactly in that condition that's described now, that we all agreed was not quite sane. So we have to come to that level of sanity. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. God is perfect. There's nothing wrong with God, there's nothing wrong with the world. There's something wrong with my vision. I have to adjust my vision. Everyone is okay. Everyone is also okay. No? Jesus Christ, He said, if someone slaps your cheek, then what should you do? Yeah. You say, my dear sir, thank you for delivering my karma. Now that I'm free of that karma now, and you have slapped my one cheek, but I would like to inform you, I do have another one, if you feel like having another go. Here it is. Turn the other cheek means, you slap me on this side, what about this side? So these are sayings, and they're there in Christianity, but these are universal truths. But to understand how deep they are, and how this is the attitude which leads us to rise above identification with the physical body and subtle material mind, by which we terminate the chain of karma, by not creating more. As soon as you respond to a situation, then you're actually extending the chain reaction more and more, and therefore tolerance is necessary. But who can live such a life? Who can have that steadiness and sobriety to respond to the world in such a pure way? So I want to move on to that topic. According to the Vedas, our mind, this subtle substance of mind, can be in 3 stages of disturbance. three stages of intensity of oscillation. Understand? The mind is like a lake. If the surface of a lake is still, then if you look, you can see your reflection there, clearly. But if you throw stones in the water and the lake surface is disturbed, then you cannot have a clear vision of anything. So the same way, the mind is like the lake in which we see the reflection of the outside world. If the mind is disturbed, we get a distorted vision of what's really going on. And if the mind is steady, then we get a clear experience of reality. So all religious practices, they're simply for this. To make the mind become steady so that we have an accurate, conscious experience of reality. So the disturbance of the mind is of 3 degrees according to the Vedas. A small oscillation or modification of the mental energy is called sattva. Sattva. Sattva, when the mind is hardly disturbed at all, there are very slight ripples there. This stage is called sattva. But if there are there's really turbulence there in the mind, this is called rajas. Rajas or passion. And if the mind is completely out of balance, then this is called tamas or darkness, ignorance. These are 3 gunas, the 3 qualities of material energy: sattva, rajas and tamas. Goodness, passion and darkness or ignorance. Now, I'm not trying to give you a Sanskrit lesson today. If you'd like one, you can apply later. But sattva, rajas, tamas, the 3 gunas, this is not Sanskrit. Go home and check your Oxford English Dictionary, and due to the popularity of yoga and the psychology of yoga, now these words have been incorporated into the English language. So these are actually English words. The 3 gunas or the 3 qualities of nature: sattva, which is equilibrium, steadiness, peacefulness, goodness; rajas, passion, that is the disturbed, oscillating mind; and tamas. Tamas is when the mind becomes so disturbed, it's in a state of almost permanent distortion. So in tamas, it's not that tamas is more active than rajas, but it's a state of distortion. We could give the example of a spring, you know. If you pull a spring a little from its resting state, it pulls back a little. If you pull a spring a lot from its resting state, it pulls back a lot. But if you really stretch the spring, then it won't spring back anymore. It becomes stuck in its distorted state. So the mind is a little bit like that. It can come out of the rest position and it will return. Or it can be stretched and then there's a lot of tension. So when the mind is disturbed by rajas, it becomes very tense. People become very tense. But if the mind is too disturbed, it becomes becomes deformed, and it may stay for a long time inactive. So what I'd like to do now is have a discussion or a meditation on the behavioral and cognitive effects of these 3 degrees of oscillation of the mind. The 3 sattva, rajas and tamas. Because we're speaking about self-improvement. And that means to overcome our lower types of behavior and thoughts and come to higher ones. So what really constitutes a lower type of behavior or a higher type of behavior? So in Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Purana, in the Vedanta and Upanishads, some descriptions of the types of behavior and the cognitive aspect also, the states of mind which come from these 3 degrees of modification of the mind have been described. And I've collected them from all these different sources and put them all together on one piece of paper here. Not only that, but I actually have one for all of you as well. So please take this. Let's get ready to. Two, there. That's it. Please take one. Just keep one for me. So we'll spend a few minutes examining this. So on the right side of the page, you have the description of the cognitive and behavioral aspects of tamas, or the extreme state of distortion of the mental energy by the ignorance, by darkness. So the cognitive aspects are depression, intolerance, fear, the absence of conscience. Such a person can give pain to others and not feel bad about that. Being filled with false expectations, delusional ideas, anger, stinginess, miserliness, and hatefulness. So these are the behavioral, cognitive aspects, of the influence of tamas, the pronounced oscillation of the mind. Now the behavioral aspects include laziness, uncontrollable addictions, frivolousness, quarrelsome, being basically a parasite, dependent on others, hypocrisy, there's a few that were repeated there, constant complaining and lamenting. So just catch yourself if you're ever in a situation with some, people like to get together, have a cup of tea and moan about the world. At that time you are associating with the darkness. Just remember that. So, constantly complaining and lamenting about things, chronic fatigue, violence, and inclination towards perversion. So all of these are coming from tamas. So the profile of a person in the lower energy, they'll tend to also, wake up late in the day, because the different times of the day are also connected with sattva, rajas, and tamas. The early morning is sattvic, the middle of the day is rajasic, and the night time is tamasic. You see? So the persons who are in the lower energy, they become awake at night and they sleep in the morning. Whereas the purified persons, they're awake in the morning and they rest at night. You see? So all of these things we can identify. You can look at this and make your own profile. It's not that anyone is completely tamasic or rajasic or sattvic. In general, we're mixtures of all of them, but we should look at the proportions. Perhaps someone might be 30% sattvic and 60% rajasic and 10% tamasic. So the tamasic persons will tend to sleep through the morning. They'll tend to eat old food, stale food, things that have been in the freezer for a month, like that. They'll tend to have many addictions, alcohol, cigarettes, and perhaps worse than that also. So this is the profile of the lower energy. So the rajasic, now we come to rajas. Rajas is a passion, and so those persons are affected by this energy. They're usually very, very active, they're very creative, they're very industrious, and they're trying to build some kind of dream. They're striving after a dream, but usually that dream involves them becoming great and respected by everyone. It's not wrong to have a dream or a goal to strive for, but if the underlying motive behind it is your own aggrandizement and that everyone should honor and worship you, then it's rajasic. So we look at the cognitive elements of rajas, pride. So all the religions of the world tell us one should not be proud. And that is why it's a call to move from that state of oscillation of the mind and go higher. Considering oneself to be superior to others. If there's that little voice in the mind just telling you that you're better than someone else, then rajas is there, the mode of passion. Overconfidence, a fondness for hearing oneself praised. Along with this comes inner anxiety, because a person who has a thirst for being honored by others gets anxious over the situation that maybe others won't honor me. So you should know that if you're feeling anxious, it's because of pride and ego. If you have no pride and ego, then there will not be any anxiety. Materially ambitious, quick-tempered, motivated by prestige, it leads to uncontrolled desires. Now, this is also a very important thing to assimilate, is that happiness is a state of mind. It's not based on the situation you have in your life. And when a person has many desires and they strive for what they think that they want, when they get there, they feel dissatisfaction. Because the satisfaction doesn't lie in the situation we're in, it lies in being situated in sattva, the peaceful, the placid state of mind. So exceptionalism. Now we come to the behavioral aspects of rajas. Intense endeavor, uncontrolled desire. The tamasic people don't have enough energy for sex, but when rajas comes, then there's a lot of energy and there's addiction to sex. Belligerence, the tendency to be quickly involved in a conflict. Being prone to ridicule others. Being prone to advertise one's own prowess. Justifying actions on the power of one's strength, and being audacious in speech and action. So these are rajasic traits. Now the problem with rajas is that it's unstable. Now because persons who are affected by that energy are very dynamic, then they're very attractive to others. So persons who are in this rajas, they generally become famous. They'll become some very big politician or the sports personality or rock star or whatever it is. Because of their passion, they're attractive. But rajas is unstable. And the nature of its instability is that it always crashes and becomes tamas. It becomes destructive. So if you see any very influential and rajasic person, they're like a shooting star. They go up and then they burn and crash. I don't know how far back we can give examples perhaps from recent times. Michael Jackson, we'll go back a bit further. Who you can give examples? Elvis Presley, let's go back a bit further. Alexander the Great, how far back do you want to go? So we can go back. And actually these profiles they were also noticed by the ancient Greeks. Because we see in the teachings of Socrates and in the writings of Plato, also Plato has described that human beings are of three types. Those who are motivated by pleasures. Those are the tamasic ones, they just want physical pleasure and comfort. And then the second type of person is the person who's motivated by the desire for honor. So they also want pleasure, but they can delay the gratification to make the sacrifice necessary to build themselves up and get the honor from everyone. And when they've got that, then they enjoy, and then they crash and burn. And then the third type of person is the person who is impelled by the desire for knowledge. Impelled by the search for the truth. So the observations of Socrates and Plato also correspond with the Vedic characterizations of different personality types, which are based on this metaphysical platform of the degrees of oscillation of the mind, sattva, rajas and tamas. So now we move on to sattva, the mode of goodness. So the cognitive aspects are humility, contentedness, being satisfied in any condition, control of the mind, tolerance, clarity of mind and discrimination, the ability to learn from past activities and experiences, and on the basis of that having insights into the future. And this is also very important. So one of the symptoms of sattva is to be embarrassed at improper action. If you do something wrong, you have to actually feel embarrassed about it. So sattva, one isn't shameless. in that state. And so there's a tendency to see one's own faults rather than the faults of others and try to correct oneself. Sattvic behavior is the person in sattva is equipoised, self-restrained and controlled of senses, generous and charitable, truthful, modest, free from frivolity, detached from sensory indulgence. They're dutiful, they take care of their duties and responsibilities in life, regardless of whatever sacrifice or difficulty it is to them personally. Simplicity or straightforwardness in their dealings, peacefulness. They have compassion to humans and to animals as well. And that's why different types of food are also in the different gunas. So meat and so on is a tamasic food, and it will promote tamas in the mind. Then very spicy foods are rajasic, but very pure vegetarian foods are sattvic. So, and that person is consistent in word and deed. In other words, the absence of hypocrisy. Now, in the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Tribir guna mayer bhava epi sarvamidam jagat mohitam na bijanati mamebhya paramabhyayam. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is speaking to each one of us and saying, some people think that there is no God. Why? Because their consciousness is down in the gunas, in these gunas. And God exists above the gunas. So if we're searching for the universal religious principles, we'll notice that each religion is prescribing a way of thinking and a way of acting. I'm speaking practically here, putting all the doctrinal differences aside about whether anyone is the only way or whether someone else is the last prophet or whatever. So putting aside all those things, but practically in regard to behavior and attitude, we see that all the religions are calling us, they're impelling us to move from the tamagun to rajagun, from rajagun to sattvagun, and the goal is ultimately to go beyond all of the gunas because God lies there. In other words, the perception of God is not something that can be had by anyone as long as the mind is oscillating due to the effect of these gunas. Now, there are two ways that one can rise. One can rise up by gritting your teeth and trying to control yourself in all circumstances. It works kind of. You move slightly in the right direction. And that idea is presented in the Ashtanga Yoga system. Ashtanga Yoga. There's pranayam, the control of the breathing and so on, because the mind is disturbed or erratic breathing. So if the breathing is made steady, the mind naturally becomes steady. So control of the mind and senses is helped by the mechanical process of pranayama, the breathing. Perhaps there have been some courses here over the weekend with some pranayama? Good. Very good. So that's a good process. And one can practice this. But there's a deeper application also and possibility which the Vedas prescribe. And that is to turn the mind towards God. By hearing about God, by singing about God, by glorifying God, by praying to God, then one actually addresses the root cause of the oscillation of the mind. You see, it's just like if you have a fan, there's a fan going on the ceiling. There are different ways that you can stop the fan. One is to try to catch the blades with your hand. You can stand on a chair and try to, but that's difficult. And the other way is just go to the switch and switch it off. Because the power which is driving the fan is controlled by the switch there. So the Vedas give us different approaches. And so our karma is moving and driving us around in the cycle of birth and death, lifetime after lifetime, like a rotating fan. And one method is you try to stop it yourself by force of practice. And that will it can slow it down somewhat, but it's not the most effective means. The other approach is to switch off the source of the oscillations of the mind. And so the Vedas say, Dwa suparna sayuja sakhaya samana vriksham parishashvajate. There is a tree, and on the branch of that tree 2 birds are sitting. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird is just watching. If the bird who is eating the fruit, which is often bitter, will give up his obsession and infatuation with the fruit and turn towards his friend, then he will experience the greatest joy. What does that mean? The tree is this human body, and the branch is Anahata Chakra, the heart chakra. And there are 2 souls present there. One soul is you and me, concerned with tasting the fruit of the tree, in other words, experiencing, tasting, enjoying the world of sense experiences. But if that one bird who was infatuated with the fruits of the tree will turn his consciousness towards the bird sitting next to him, that is God within the heart of all of us, then one finds complete happiness. Because the state of oscillation of mind is the default position that comes about from the apathy or indifference towards loving service to God. So loving service to God in Sanskrit is called the Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. And so automatically when a person lives their life fully, in all respects, as an expression of devotion to God, then the default position of being overwhelmed by the 3 gunas which are causing the oscillation of the mind, this is unplugged. And naturally all of these behaviors and responses and thoughts and feelings, they gradually subside by the absorption in Bhakti Yoga. So ultimately in Bhagavad Gita the different types of yoga are described. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and the conclusion is given of devotion there. So Bhakti Yoga is a marvelous subject. It's a deep subject, does require a teacher. If anyone would like to study that, it's necessary to find a qualified teacher and practice under the guidance of a teacher and have a daily sadhana by which this devotion grows and grows until all the oscillations of the mind are completely pacified, and then soul experiences a Satchidananda, the atmosphere beyond this world of eternity, knowledge and bliss. So thank you for listening very patiently. I'll conclude my discourse there. I suspect that you may have some questions. So we have a few minutes and we can field a few questions. Yes, sir. What's your name? Jeff. Jeff. I'm honored to meet you, Jeff. Please share with me your inquiry.
I've just been studying the Vedas. In the ninth Veda, they talk about soma. How would you relate to your tradition and the understanding of soma?
Yes, in Rig Veda, it's also discussed in Bhagavad Gita as well. In regard to the performance of karma, there are 2 things, karma and karma yoga. The aim of the rituals of karma which are described in the Vedas is to produce a higher happiness in the next life. You see, whatever we do now creates the next life. So, if a human being is just trying to be good and living a general kind of life, then in the next life again they'll become a human being. But the Vedas give some possibility of performing yajna, performing sacrifices. And when these sacrifices are performed, they create a karmic reaction in the future that instead of being born on earth, you'll go up to a higher plane. It's not mukti, moksha, nirvana, liberation, but a higher plane within this universe. So those planes have been described in the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhur Bhuvaha Swaha. So 2 levels up from earth there is Swaha, or Swargalok. On Swargalok there's a beverage available there called Soma. And it causes one to be healthy and have incredible sensory powers for thousands of years. And therefore when persons hear about this, then they engage in the chanting of mantras and the performance of yajna in order to go to a higher plane and experience a fantastic level of luxury and enjoyment. You see? So that's Swarga, the higher planes of existence. And that is for those who are, they have some selfish motivation. We're discussing today about motivation. So the Vedas speak of 4 types of motivation. One motivation, why are we acting? Why does someone act? One is called karma, fruitive activity. I'm acting so that in the future I'll enjoy. It may be next week, next year, after 10 years when I retire, or if someone does a Vedic sacrifice, then it may be related to the next life. So that's the path of karma, that motivation. The other path, the other type of motivation which is possible is yog siddhi. I'm not going to try to enjoy, I'm going to do tapasya, austerity and self-control, and by this I'll develop some mystical powers, such as healing. I'll be able to heal others by mystical powers or whatever, or levitate, or these types of things that yogis may do. So that desire to develop some subtle power is another type of motivation. Then another type of motivation is called jnana, the desire for knowledge by which I'll get mukti or liberation. Now, these are the 3 possible motivations behind anyone. So when those who follow the Vedic paradigm examine any idea or any religious system, they're not concerned with the doctrinal details. They just ask the question, why are you doing this? What's your motivation? You see? So, if one is acting or following a religious path or whatever it is to get some future enjoyment, that's just selfish. If one is following a path to develop some mystical power, this is selfish. And if you're following the path to get mukti, moksha, nirvana, just to be liberated, it's also really about you. So the 4th motivation is bhakti. Bhakti is unconditional love. That's really the message. That's what Dharma is about. It's about unconditional love. Who am I? I'm an insignificant person. I'm not particularly important. But if I can do something out of love to please God, and God will be happy, then that's my perfection. My perfection is to give happiness, not to take. The soul is not an absorbing unit. The soul is an emanating unit. We're meant to give. We're not meant to take. So both the spirit of exploitation, or karma, and yog-siddhi, and the spirit of renunciation, desiring salvation, emancipation, they all have something in common. They come from ahankara, ego, from what I want. Only bhakti transcends the ego. And that is the dharma of the soul. Just that it is the quality of fire to emit heat and light. The actual dharma of the Atma is dynamic, uninterrupted, unconditional, selfless, loving service. That's the dharma of the soul. So at once when one takes up bhakti yoga, the spirit of loving service to God, now you're acting on the platform of the soul, all the other coverings fall away.
About soma?
Yes. Yes. Oh, just to summarize the point about soma, that soma is a beverage, it's called soma rasa. And rasa means a liquid. So soma rasa is a beverage which is tasted by those who, by performing the karma rituals in their next life, instead of being born here in New Zealand, instead of being born in wherever, Syria, where a war is going on, instead of being born in Beverly Hills, perhaps they're more comfortable there, perhaps not. So by our karma, people are born in different situations. But if someone follows these particular mantras of the Vedas, they can take birth in a higher plane. And there, they do it to taste the somaras, which invigorates that celestial body with a very long lifespan, free from disease, and incredible sensory capacities to enjoy. So that's what the soma is for. Now one might question, well, why is that in the Vedas? That's an important question. If the Vedas are teaching us about Atma Dharma, which is the loving service of God, pure bhakti, pure devotion, why are these things such as alluring us with the promise of soma, the karma, and the section about jnana, mukti, liberation also, and about yoga and developing mystic powers through yoga siddhis? Why are these things described in the Vedas to be frustrating the ultimate purpose? So it's not like that. You see, what happens is, when a person does a Vedic yajna to attain the soma, one part of that yajna includes making offerings to Vishnu, to God, and uttering the mantras composed of the name of God. And in this way, what the Vedas do essentially is take advantage or exploit your quest for the fulfillment of your material desires by promising to fulfill them, and actually fulfilling them also, but inserting in that an element of bhakti which will gradually, over a period of time, take away those desires, so one will come to a higher stage. And so it's said in the Bhagavad Purana, Parakshavado Vedo Yam Balanam Anusasanam. There Krishna said, in the Vedas, I have sometimes been described indirectly, because the people of the world are like children, and they have to be enticed into doing things which are for their benefit. You see, like that. So when the Vedas offer liberation, when they offer heavenly enjoyments, where there's a yajna, there's a sacrifice you can perform to get a very beautiful wife, and or whatever you want, there's a yajna for it, there's a sacrifice for it. So they offer all of these things, but connect it with an element of bhakti, devotion, and in this way, just as a parent may say to a child, I'll give you some ice cream if you eat your spinach. Understand? Like that. So it's the ice cream is an allurement to get them to do something that's really good for them. And so that's why in the Vedas Krishna says that Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavajuna, which means, yes, the Vedas do deal with subjects connected with the gunas, but you should become nirgun, go beyond it.
Can I just ask a clarification? Because you talk about the Bhagavad Gita,
yes,
which is in the Mahabharata,
yes,
which is a later time than the Vedas, before Vedas appeared. So how are you making the connection? Because Krishna is not mentioned in the Vedas. It's
oh no, Krishna is discussed in Gopal Tupani Upanishad, and the first mantra, the first mantra is that we said this evening, Swasti Vachanam. The Swasti Vachanam is also from the Rig Veda. There is Om Swastino Govindaha Swastino. This Govinda is also a name for Krishna. You may not see the name Krishna also in places, but Govinda, Madhav, Madhusudan, and there are many, many names related to that, and they all come up in Bhagavad Gita. But in relating the Gita to the Vedic, the four Vedas, you see, actually the Veda was one. The Veda was one. It was called Yajur Veda, but it wasn't written down. It was an oral tradition. And so about 5,000 years ago, at the beginning of this particular astrological age, Kali Yuga, then Krishna Dvaipayan Veda Vyas, this is not Krishna, that was just his name. His name was Veda Vyas. He decided that the mantra should be written down and organized into groups that were to make them more easily understandable. So Vyas took the mantras of the Vedas, which were an oral tradition, and then separated them into what you now know as the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda. Mantras which were left over then went into the Puranas, and so on.
I also heard there's a fifth one called Krishna Veda. Is that something came on later? It's an opinion. It's an opinion, but in the Vedic literature, the Puranas have been mentioned as a fifth Veda. The Puranas together be called Panchama Veda.
And so what we have here, Vyas, he divided them, and you have what's known as traditionally the 4 Vedas. But then he realized that many general persons would not be qualified to study them. So what he wanted to do was to extract or distill the essence of the Vedic knowledge in a way that would be the common people would be able to assimilate. It would be accessible for them. And so what did he do? He wrote the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata is a great adventure. It's a huge, it's full of politics and intrigue and beautiful princes and princesses, and you know what the Mahabharata's like, right? And so the Mahabharata builds up and captures the attention of everyone, as it has fascinated the entire Asian continent for thousands of years. And when it comes to the climax of the story, when everyone is right on the edge of their seat, and a battle is about to begin, then Arjuna tells Krishna, drive my chariot in between the 2 armies so I can see who will fight here. And then of course he looks and he sees friends on both sides and has a nervous breakdown. So it's a strange turn of affairs in the Mahabharata, because one of the main characters and the greatest hero basically becomes a wuss, right? Becomes a sissy, he loses his bottle, and he just flakes out. Right. Okay. So, and no one expected that. No one expected that. And at that, now, who's going to save the day? Luckily, Krishna's driving his chariot, and what he speaks to him to invigorate him, to embolden him, to fill him with the courage to face life, and while facing the difficulties of life, become enlightened and develop pure devotion. To give all of these things. So the Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses. There in that particular chapter of the Mahabharata comes. And in this way, Vyas did a wonderful service for everyone in the whole world, to take those who are incapable of really understanding the very deep metaphysics of the Vedas, attract them by essentially the world's oldest soap opera, the Mahabharata, and in the middle of it give the essence of all the Vedic knowledge, the metaphysics, the Vedanta, and everything right there. So that was the intention of Vyas. Thank you. So you're most welcome. It's quite late now, so I regret that I will have to finish.
Yes, there is.
I'd just like to put a question to you, just to wind up our session today. Would you like a little more music? Just a minute or 2 of the meditation music. Because the music itself, we're singing mantras. And by absorbing the mind in mantras, what it actually does is it obliterates the sanskars in the subconsciousness. And that's why we do it. So those sanskars that are the cause of our problem, they become obliterated by the absorption in mantra. Because by singing the mantra, the one bird in the tree is turning to his friend. Yes. Yes.
I actually have a question. Really quickly, only because you spoke about the bird. So you're really saying we don't have free will, other than if we turn our attention.
That's a wonderful question. You're saying, so we really don't have free will, other than that we turn our attention. It's like that, yeah. When we make a decision, should I eat the arugula salad or the hamburger, like that, we're not really choosing. It's the gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas, they're doing the choosing. But that doesn't mean that the atma is devoid of free will. The soul has free will, but its free will is directional, to turn away from God or to turn towards God. To turn towards that bird in the tree of our heart, or to turn away, and that's where we can express our free will there. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to be in a D sharp, I think. Let's see. Yeah, we'll be in D sharp, and we'll be singing in Shuddha Kalyan Rag. So all these different ragas, they create different types of emotions. So we started off with a kind of somber, serious mood, but now everyone's feeling so happy. So we'll do something a bit more with the spirit of jubilation. Radhe, 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 Shama, Shama, Radhe, Radhe, Shama, Shama, Radhe, Radhe, Shama, Shama, Radhe, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. much has been said this evening about service to God, in Sanskrit called Krishna. These Sanskrit words are actually, you can own them. They are yours. Sanskrit is the mother language of all languages. What is the Sanskrit word for daughter? Daughter in Sanskrit is duhitra. What is the Sanskrit word for brother? Brata. What is the Sanskrit word for mother? Mata. This is the root language of all languages, the root culture of all cultures. What is the English word for a person? I'm giving the Oxford definition, Oxford Dictionary definition once again. Compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion. Compelling attractiveness that inspires devotion. That's the explanation of a word in the English dictionary, Oxford English Dictionary. What word is that? Huh? Who? Charisma. Charisma, yes. Charisma. It comes from the Greek, charisma, which comes from, ultimately, from the Sanskrit, Krishna. Krishna means the ultimate reality is a beautiful, compelling beauty that inspires devotion. And therefore this Sanskrit word is used. And the word Radha indicates the feminine aspect. The God, so we ended with singing Radhe, Radhe, the feminine aspect of Godhead. We ended with that for all the feminists here tonight. Good night. It seems here that the ladies are running the show.
Thank you. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us all in such a vibrant way. Thank you. And we have a little something for you for coming to see us here in New Zealand. So thank you. That's all. So I must say though, in the next couple of days, Prem may be popping in to have a cup of tea with us, so which will be lovely. Anyway,
I was born in England, but I've been living in India for so long. It's been a long time since I had a Devonshire tea.
Thank you. Oh, okay, we're having a cup of tea, I think. Have we got Jeanette? Yeah. Okay, cup of tea down here, and we'll do announcements in the morning, I think. Okay, thank you.